Rambam coming to a conclusion. Actually, it'll be tomorrow. We'll have one more chapter left of our. This is the sixth book, if I remember correctly. Right? Sixth book. Huh?
Chapter 5.
Yeah.
I don't know what book.
Hilchis Erchin Charamim, the book of value, right? That you're taking a value of something and giving it to the Bedek Abayis, to the Holy Temple, right? This is actually about donations, right? And what you take upon yourself. So when a person consecrates his ancestral field, it is a mitzvah for him to redeem it. For the owner receives priority. If, however, he does not desire to, we do not compel him, right? This way, that way, everybody had their ancestral, property that was maintained by them. And therefore, it was a mitzvah for them to redeem it. Why would they consecrate it? Is in order to, this is a way that they gave charity. Actually, it's a little intriguing because so instead of consecrate your field, just give money, because in the end you're gonna have to give the money to redeem it. I'm not exactly clear why it's done that way. Why would it be? I don't know. Lots of questions. Don't get too many answers. Only because I'm not. I got to look into it. I should lose sleep at night for this, but
Sleep expert.
yeah. Well, I don't know about that, but maybe for other reasons. All right. So when does the above apply? In the era of the Jubilee is observed, for the Jubilee arrives and he does not redeem it, it will be expropriated for the sake of the Kohanim, as we've explained. Right? In other words, no one is expropriating the field that was consecrated. Remember that Bedek Abayis, the Holy Temple treasury, doesn't need a field, doesn't have anything from a field, right? They're not in the business of being farmers. They're in the business of running the Holy Temple. They've got to take care of it, right? They got to make sure there's sacrifices, communal sacrifices sufficient. And, the judges would get paid. They have to pay for them, right? From the Sanhedrin and the people that worked and different things. So there was, a cost. So they needed to be redeemed. So they get money for it, because it's the money that they could use, right? So, but if no one redeemed it, so it went to the Kahanim by the Jubilee year. We learned that. In the era, Jubilee year has been nullified, and it is not expropriated for the sake of the Kohanim, but instead it will ultimately be redeemed. We compel the owner to make the initial bid. So there was an era. Right. There was a time that the temple stood, but the Jubilee year was not practiced anymore. It was nullified. And we'll see later on it'll be in chapter 8. Okay. Tomorrow. So now you got a problem, because it's who's going to go to? In Jubilee year, it went to the Kohanim. The Kohanim actually purchased it. They got a bargain rate, in the last, and when no one else wanted it. But now, if you don't have the Jubilee year, so they compel the initial owner that he has to make an initial bid, and it's redeemed for its worth, like all consecrated articles. If someone who was willing to add to the bid to redeem it, he may redeem it. If not, we tell him, it has come to you, and you must give what he bid. He may not make an opening bid for less than 4 prutas, or the fifth that will be added will be not less than a pruta. That's a very small amount, by the way, right? Because a pruta is like a very small amount. It's not exactly clear, like how you have land that's going to be such a small bid. But in any case, because you can't make less than a pruta, It's like 10 cents. Okay, halacha number 2. If the owner desired to sell other fields that he owned or to borrow to redeem this field that he consecrated, he has a permission to do so. So now we're not talking about consecrating. He's talking about he's selling off land. Why? He needs some money. So he's selling off land that he owned or to borrow to redeem the field. So he sold land in order to get money. Well, no, it's just to borrow. To redeem his field that he consecrated. So he has permission to do so. This applies whether he consecrated the field during the time of Jubilee observed or when it's not observed. He is given precedence over others, again, to redeem the land, right? Because it's ancestral land, so it's preferable that he has it. Plus, he has to give a fifth on top of it. Similarly, if he desired to redeem half of it, he may. This contrasts with the laws that apply when one sells a field to an ordinary person. There's a greater distinction that applies with regard to ordinary property and not to the temple treasury. The temple treasury, they're getting the money. They have no use for the field. So if they're going to get half of the field paid for, fine. That's sufficient, right? But another person, for him to, that if I sold my ancestral property, which by the way I didn't get because I'm a Levite.
That goes back to you on the Jubilee year.
No, I'm saying, but I didn't have ancestral land. I'm a Levite. I'm saying me. I gave me as an example. Right? Me personally, right? Not a good example. Reuben, on the other hand, right? So if he sold it to another person, right, or another person, right, he sold another person, that other person doesn't necessarily want to have half taken away from him because he bought it full. So he wants to have the full, benefit of the land and not partial. So from the person that you sold it to, you cannot buy half of it. You have to take the whole of it, right? But from the temple treasury, you could purchase half.
I don't understand why you'd be selling something to someone only for you to buy half of it.
Reuben was down and out.
Yeah.
He needed money.
Yeah.
So he sold his property.
Yes.
He got money for it. Now he got himself back together after a couple of years,
Okay.
right? He got himself back together. So now he wants to purchase it back.
Okay.
It's ancestral property, right?
You can't do that.
He could.
He could do that.
He could do that.
Yeah.
But he can't buy half. He has to buy the whole.
So take the whole thing back.
Right. But if you consecrated that same property, you could buy half back. Right? Because the temple treasury, it's not like they're doing something with the land.
I see. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But the guy who bought it from you is doing something with the land. He's doing something with the land. So for him, it's either the whole land or,
He doesn't want half of it. But
right.
if it belongs to the temple or it's consecrated to the temple, then they're just going to get the money and it has no.
So the fact that they're only getting half is also something.
Yeah, they're getting,
right? In others, he's only redeeming half of it, right? That clear?
Yes.
But you have to buy the entire portion.
We're saying
But-
not if it's consecrated to the temple treasury.
Because the temple doesn't have people working the field.
Right.
It's just their land.
So the fact that they're going to get half money, is better. If they got someone who's bidding on the whole property, then they're going to give it to someone with the whole property. But if all there is getting is half, so they're going to take that. Okay, when a person consecrates his home, a non-kosher animal, or other property, now he consecrated, right? They are valued for their worth, whether it be high or low. If the person who consecrated them, his wife or his heirs, redeemed them, they must add a fifth. We compel the owner to make the first bid. The money is set aside for improvements for the temple.
It's like a tax.
Yeah.
So if he's buying this,
He's buying it back.
but now the fifth of the value he has to give to the temple. He has to add.
No, he has to add a fifth. He's giving the whole thing is for the temple.
It's for the whole.
Right, the above applies whether the house was from a walled city or from a walled habitation. The owner may redeem it at all times. What? That's not what we learned. Oh, because here it's being consecrated, right? That's the difference. Yeah. Right? Here it's being consecrated so he can redeem it at any time. Because again, temple treasury, they don't need the home.
They don't need the cow.
Right.
There's the cash.
They need the right, cash. This is where you learn cash is king.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is by consecrated, right? Following the law, rules apply. If another person redeemed it from the temple treasury, if the home was within the walled city and it remained in the possession of the redeemer for 12 months, it becomes property forever. Why?
Wait, sorry, just going back to the other one that we just did, when he's redeeming, when his wife or him, he's redeeming something that he consecrated to the temple, and there's a fifth added. So,
No, that's not, that's before, not now.
no, sorry, I meant before.
Yeah.
The question about before.
Go ahead.
When he's redeeming something, he consecrated this to the temple, now he wants to redeem it. So he's paying like, let's say 100 shekels to get the cow back. Now there's like sort of an interest he's also paying to the temple.
Not an interest. It's not. I don't think it's called an interest, but it's called
Like an extra.
yeah, tax, if you will, whatever.
Okay, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. That's only, by the way, the one who was the original owner or his wife or the heirs. But if someone else doesn't pay a fifth more,
No, they could just.
they just buy it for the value,
buy it.
right? Now, if another person came and redeemed, so here, Ruvain consecrated to the temple treasury. He didn't redeem it. Shimon came and redeemed it. He bought it. A home in a walled city. If he didn't buy it back from him, because he redeemed it now, right? He doesn't have to pay the fifth, right? But it's just whatever the value is, right? If he didn't buy it from him from within 12 months, he can never get that home back. It belongs to him forever. He has 12-month period
To buy it back from him.
Yeah. Right. Because
So
this is a home that you dwell in. And therefore that's what the Torah says, but the understanding behind it is, I think the Rambam says, if I recall, is because after 12 months, this was your home. You don't have a home, you're going to get a different home. Right? You're not going to be a vagabond wandering homeless. So therefore you have up till 12 months. After that, you can't redeem it anymore. It belongs to this guy forever. Okay? Got it?
Yeah. So even the Jubilee year won't bring it back to you.
No.
And when something was consecrated to the temple, and maybe we discussed this some other time and I missed it, so apologies. But if when something is consecrated to the temple, does that mean that like the person doesn't get it back? Like if I give my land to the temple, like this is for you, then when the Jubilee year comes, do I get it back from the temple? Or when I consecrate it?
No, you have to redeem it. You have to
Oh,
redeem it. You have to redeem it. You have to redeem it. Right?
So it's not.
Nothing goes back unless it was sold to a private individual.
That's a good example.
Right?
Yeah.
Only, and that's a field,
Yeah.
not a home. We just learned a home doesn't go back. You have to redeem within the year. A home in a walled city, because that's a place of living, right? That person always needs a place to live. So up to 12 months, we give you the opportunity to get your place of living. When we're speaking about field, that's a place of work. That's different.
Oh,
That's what we will see, okay? Sorry. All right. It becomes property forever. If the home is located in an unwalled habitation and the Jubilee arrived while it was in possession of the Redeemer, it returns to the owner in the Jubilee. So now we're talking about it's a home, but it's unwalled. What does it mean it's unwalled? Because it's a home that's attached to field, right? So it's not just a home, it's also your place of work, right? So that comes back to you in the Jubilee year.
Yeah.
Okay? If you didn't redeem it. So in fact, what happened was it's sort of like a lease that the person bought it from from the treasury, temple treasury, and he leased it for as many years are left until the Jubilee year. Okay?
Back to the original.
Exactly. When a person consecrated an unblemished kosher animal for the sake of improvements in the temple, he has transgressed a positive commandment. We'll see in the following halacha. Nevertheless, the deed he performed is of consequence, and sanctify is conveyed upon the animal. It is redeemed, even though it is unblemished. Other words, why would it be redeemed? In contrast, the animal consecrated to the sacrifice is redeemed only when it is blemished. The kohen establishes its worth, and the money is given to the improvements of the temple. The person who redeems it only for the sake of an offering on the altar for the type of sacrifice for which it is fitting. So you redeem it, but you can only use it for an offering on the altar because it's got holiness to it, right? This is required because any consecrated entity that is fit for the altar is never released from the obligation to sacrifice on the altar. Because it's an animal that could be on the altar, so therefore it never is released of the holiness once it's been sanctified. A field that you sanctified or a home, well, that's not something that can be put on the altar. So there's no inherent holiness to it, right? You put holiness on it only in order that it should be redeemed. So the temple treasury can get money, right? But there's no inherent holiness to it. But an animal that's fit for the altar, there's an inherent holiness once you sanctified it. Because now it's meant for the altar.
You can't redeem.
So you do redeem it, but you can only redeem it that it can be used on the altar.
So if you take a cow, a perfect cow that could be used for an offering, and you give it to
So that's why it's a sin, because you shouldn't do such a thing.
and you give it to the temple for their purposes to consecrate it to them, then if you want to get it back, it must be used for.
Exactly. Now,
But you,
number six, what is the source of the teachings of forbidden to consecrate an unblemished animal for the improvement of the temple? Others, why is it a sin that you can take this unblemished animal that's not holy, it's my animal, and I consecrate it to the temple
yeah.
treasury? So why would that be a sin? So it says in the verse, and an ox and a sheep that is irregular sized limbs or on split hooves, it shall be consecrated as a donation. So, meaning, according to the oral tradition, we have learned that the term donation implies that it is consecrated for improvements of the temple. Similar, the situation indicates that it was not consecrated only for its worth, for a blemished animal is not offered on the altar. So it indicates it was consecrated only for its worth, rather. This denotes the term that is consecrated for improvements improvements in the temple. But an unblemished animal should not be consecrated as a donation of improvements in the temple. A prohibition derived from the positive commandment as the status of a positive commandment. So saying like this, the verse is telling us that make your donation of something that's not fitting for the temple, for the altar.
Yeah.
That you can make a donation. Implied from that is don't make a donation of something that is fitting for the altar.
Yeah.
That's the implication.
Okay.
Right? You shouldn't do that. Why? Because for the altar is more holiness than for the temple treasury. Temple treasury is it's holy,
Yeah.
but it's not as holy as putting something on the altar.
No.
So this animal could be fit for the altar. So don't bring it to a lesser holiness when you can make it for a greater holiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
But once you've done that, you've now the sanctity in it cannot be removed because it could be used for the altar. So redeem it, but redeem it only to use it for the altar. Pretty involved over there. Number 7, yeah.
No, I mean so if they gave this cow to the temple treasury, which they shouldn't have done, but let's say they do it, and then the temple treasury actually uses the cow and sacrifices it on the altar, then there's no way it can be redeemed. So that's fine. Like if you buy something from someone else and then you kill it, for instance, then like it's done, it's finished.
I'm sorry, repeat that again.
The land can be redeemed at a jubilee year, or like beforehand, you could pay and you can get it back. Why would you
That's
ever
redeemed. That's called redeemed,
yeah,
by the
but
way.
why would you ever like give a cow, for instance, on like a 50-year lease to the Jubilee year when the cow's either gonna die or it's gonna be.
No,
slaughtered.
you're not get, no, a cow doesn't come back to you.
So then why would you be redeeming the cow in the first place? If you gave it to the temple treasury, they're not just gonna keep they're gonna slaughter the cow for the offering. Anyway. this
So
is
that
our-
I'm not clear on that, why it would need to be redeemed if it could be used for, that's a good question. And if it's not redeemed, so why not just use it for an offering?
Yeah,
Not, I don't know. Good question. No. Number 7. The following rules apply when a person consecrates an animal without making any specifications or consecrates his property without making any specifications. We survey all the unblemished animals that are fit to be offered on the altar. The males should be sold for the purpose of burnt offerings and offered as burnt offerings. And the females should be sold as peace offerings and offered as peace offerings. In other words, a person consecrated, but not specifically for a purpose, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. The proceeds of the sales should be given for the improvements in the temple. I think the reason is plain and simple, because whenever you consecrate something, it's going for improvements of the temple. That's not for the altar. So therefore, that's why it should be sold. But that's why it should be redeemed, rather,
yeah.
right? Because the monies there are meant for that specific, right? Which improvements of the temple actually do include if there's a need for sacrifice. But they have the prerogative of what the what are the needs now? What are the needs? They had other things that they needed money for, like to fix the roads. We learned this earlier, to fix the roads before the holidays, right? So people can come make aliyah. They walk. They walked, right? They didn't take
Uber.
they didn't take an Uber, exactly. So they had a lot of things that they used those monies for. So they would have the prerogative on what is the needs now. But if you gave this animal, so it can only be used for this. So I think maybe that's why it needed to be preferred to be redeemed. So that way they would have the funds to use it as needed, right? That's my
So
understanding.
yeah, they'd have access to the money to do what they need to do.
Right. Because at different times it'd be different needs, and it could be they don't need money for an offering, right? Okay. So the proceeds of the sale should be given to the improvements of the temple. For unless explicit specifications is made, all consecrated articles are for the sake of improvement of the temple. So in other words, if you said that this is, I'm giving this animal for an oil offering, for a burnt offering, right? So that's what it's being given for.
It's not being given for its value.
It's not being right. So then seemingly, but then it sounds like even then you redeem it and you take the money and use it for burnt offering. I'm not clear why. Okay. Concerning this, it states, if the animal which can be offered as a sacrifice for God, all parts of it that you can give to God shall be holy. Implied is that every entity that is fit to be offered as a sacrifice on the altar should be offered on the altar. Yeah, if it's fitting to. Okay. Halacha number 8. Yeah, when a person consecrates his possession without making any specifications, and among them were wine, oil, fine flour, and those that are fit for it to be offered on the altar, they should be sold for the purpose of offering and that employ them, and they should be offered. The money should be used for purchase male animals, and that should be brought as burnt offerings. Again, so it's a little why? And just use what you got. Why do you have to?
Why can't they just sell all this stuff, get the money, and do whatever they want with it?
No, you see, you can't. Because
I
it was
know- I
given,
know- I know
because it was
you-
given for that purpose. You gave it for that. You gave it for
Oh,
that. So
okay.
then therefore, that's
So
what should be
you
used.
Consecrate wine and then just say.
No,
oh,
wine is used on the
no, I
altar,
understand
right?
that, but it's not like you can consecrate wine and they could sell it and get money and then use it for the road, for instance.
Not if it's been done for that purpose. If it was done, remember that was the previous halacha. If you gave it without specification, that's a different story.
Yeah,
But if you gave with specifications, then it needs to be used for
Okay.
that. You have
But
to
you
honor. One second. If it's mine and I gave it for this purpose, so
Yeah.
don't you come and do for another purpose, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
but if I just said, here's my house, I'm giving everything to the temple, there you go, and in it.
Yeah, so
happens to have
then,
wine,
okay.
then they can.
Then they can use as they see fit. Yeah. Why should the proceeds from these sales be used for to bring burnt offerings and priests of the sale of unblended shams be used for improvements of unblemished shams be used for improvements of the temple? Ah, right. We said unblemished animal, but right. It seemed why not the unblemished animal? The rationale is that when the animal is consecrated to the altar, suffers a disqualifying blemish. There's the concept of being redeemed, as will be explained. The rationale is that when the animal is consecrated to the altar, suffers a disqualifying blemish, there is the concept of being redeemed. When by contrast, fine flour, when oil and those become unfit for the altar, there's no concept of redeeming them. This is derived from the states when you have an animal stand before the priest and the Kohen shall evaluate, implied that any entity that stood before the priest and is evaluated may be redeemed. If the entity is not stood before the priest, the Kohen and evaluated may not be redeemed. Okay. So an animal you can redeem because it'll stand before the Kohen that he will evaluate its value and you could redeem it. But wine, flour, and the stuff is not something that's evaluated, doesn't stand before. It's not like an animal that stands before, right? Stand before is like an animal stands before, but other things don't stand before. So therefore, they're not evaluated, they're excluded if they become unfit for, and therefore that you can't redeem it. And since you can't redeem it, when it becomes unfit,
How would the flour become unfit?
becomes impure. The flour becomes impure, you can't put it onto the altar, right?
But then why does it need to be evaluated by the Kohen?
Because the verse says only that which stands before, like an animal stands before the Kohen, he will evaluate. So it means other things that do not. In other words, you can't redeem it when it comes impure. An animal you could redeem.
If it's impure.
Right, because
You give your cow to
because that animal
treasury.
could be used for something else.
Yeah, but if you give like your perfect cow to the no, you give a cow to the.
It was pure, it became impure.
Yeah,
You could redeem it. And that's why the unblemished one was going to be used for the improvements of the temple, right?
You can buy
As
it back.
opposed to the altar, because here when it I don't exactly get the rationale. I mean, I get the distinction. Since the animal could, when it becomes unblemished, I mean, it becomes blemished, you could redeem it. The other things become blemished, you can't redeem it. Therefore, when it is not blemished, it should be used only for that because there's nothing else you could use it for.
Yeah, she used for the.
So therefore, we'll use it for the altar. But the animal could be used, you could redeem it even if it is blemished, so it doesn't matter. So therefore, use it for the temple treasury.
But you can only redeem it if it is blemished.
No, even if it,
But if you redeem it and it's unblemished, then it has to be used for an offering.
right.
Right.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
flour, though, you give it, the flour doesn't go through this inspection
Yeah.
process.
Right, exactly. Okay. I
So then could
get
you
it, but not perfectly.
Could you redeem the flour,
No, we said no.
even if it turns out that the flour
So
is good?
that's why the flour is meant, that's why use it, since it can't be redeemed, so use it as an offering. In other words, since it's not cash, it won't turn into cash, so use it as the offering, right? The animal can always be turned into cash.
Yeah.
So therefore give it the cash is then good for the improvements of the temple, right? Because it can always be turned into cash, whether it's blemished or not blemished. Either one, you could redeem it,
Yeah.
right? So therefore, let it turn into cash. So which sounds like to use for the temple treasury is like, the preferred. Because then they get the choice of how they're going to use it. Remember, they had a lot of responsibilities, right? Of what, this is, they had a lot of responsibilities. Okay, number 10. When a person consecrates his possessions without making any specifications, and among them was incense that was given to a craftsman for his wages until they return and purchase it. It was given to the craftsman for their wages until they return and purchase it. As we explained in Hilchos Shkolim, it should be given to the craftsmen for their wages, as is done with the remainder of the incense. These guidelines are also followed when one of the spices used for the incense offering is found among his possessions. I really not clear on that.
I have to go.
Yeah, actually, I have to stop here. I didn't realize the time. Yes, folks, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Good day, everyone.
Y'all have a good day.